Well, y'all, I am excited about this morning's message and excited about sharing this vision with you, but I'm going to be really intentional to talk more slowly, because I know when I get excited, I tend to talk fast, and there's a lot of details that I want you to catch, and so I don't want to talk too fast today. But as we get to this point in our vision campaign, this whole idea that is leading our church to more, this campaign that is calling us as a people to step up in love and to step out in faith, to step up in generosity and step out in service. I want you to be reminded that this campaign has kind of multiple layers, multifaceted. There's lots of different things going on in it, and it is bigger than a building, but it's not less than a building. And a part of this whole emphasis is the idea of constructing a new building here on our campus, creating more space for more ministry. And that is what I get to do this morning, is cast the vision for this building project that is our church's bold next step. And I am excited about that primarily because I'm excited about each of the purposes of why we're doing this. So, if you're going to preach a message about building and working together to fund and construct something, where in the Bible would you go? Maybe you would turn to Noah and look at the massive construction project that is the ark, right? This deal that was used for rescue and redemption in a space of judgment. Maybe you'd go to Moses and his supervision of the building of the tabernacle, this temporary portable sanctuary that was used in the wilderness for God's people while they were waiting to enter into the promised land. Maybe you would go to Solomon, King Solomon, and the construction of the temple in Jerusalem, a more permanent structure for the presence of God to dwell among God's people. All those would be good places to go with probably more familiar biblical builders. But instead, we're going to go to Nehemiah. Now, maybe Nehemiah is not as familiar as Moses or Noah, but I hope you become more familiar with him today, this lesser-known builder named Nehemiah. We're going to be in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 4 in the Old Testament. My encouragement to you, if you have a paper Bible, just use the table of contents. Let that help you find Nehemiah today. And we'll put the words up on the screen. You can follow along if you don't have a Bible, and we would love to send you home with a Bible from our Welcome Center in the foyer. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 4. Let's look at the story of this lesser-known builder, because I think what you'll find is that there's so much of his purpose and project that lines up and speaks to our church's bold next steps. But I want to start with some background so that you have a better understanding biblically of what's going on with Nehemiah. Nehemiah begins in chapter 1 with both a problem and a prayer. There's a problem that needs a solution and a prayer that he brings before God. Nehemiah is an Israelite. He's one of God's chosen people, and he's living outside of his homeland, exiled in another country called Babylon. Nehemiah's homeland is in ruins, and God lays a burden on his heart to go back and do a work of rebuilding the broken city, particularly the city's walls. He's moved by God to do something. So he prays, and he asks God for help, and he praises, and he remembers the Lord's promises and the Lord's faithfulness to his people. And then in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 4, this is what we have. The king of Babylon said to me, to Nehemiah, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it." You can see from the start, prayer, a problem, and Nehemiah's God-given desire to work on building. Nehemiah was led by God to do this, to step up and to step out for this particular purpose. But you have to understand from the start that this God-given vision was bigger than him. It was way bigger than Nehemiah. No, this was something that would require God and God's leadership and God's provision, no doubt. But this would also require the others. This would require God's people collaboratively working together into this project. I want you to skip down to verse 17 in chapter 2. At this point, where you find Nehemiah is out of Babylon and back into his homeland. And at this point, he's actually speaking to his fellow Israelites. 2:17, this is what he says. Then I said to them, his fellow Israelites, you see the trouble that we are in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me, seeing the Lord's providence and provision in all of this. The people replied to Nehemiah, let us start rebuilding. And so they began this good work. Church, let's begin this good work. What moved from a problem to solve and a prayer for God's help became a project for God's people. Nehemiah's God-inspired vision became the people's collective mission. And Brazos Point, that's what I hope as we get into this today, is that we see the task before us so similarly, while at the same time recognizing that it's very different. It's very different than what we see in Nehemiah, but there are some similarities that I think we can glean from as we move in this direction that we believe that God is leading us to as a church. We believe God is leading our church up and out together to collaborate for this building, for these specific purposes. And when I say we, what I mean is not just me. It certainly includes me, but I'm just a part of this. When I say we, I mean the leadership of the church, including our staff team, our team of 11 ministry team members who have worked together, and we have prayed and processed and planned, and we together want to present this vision to the church. When I say we, I don't just mean the church staff leadership, I also mean our advisory team. We have this team of 7. This team of volunteer leaders that are appointed by the body to be my source of accountability as we lead the church together. And they truly are a team of advisors that advise us. And so they have done their job. They have advised, they have affirmed, and they have approved. So we all together are leading the church in this direction. Passionate about what we know God has done for us, what God is doing in us, and what God is calling us to. So we're building new walls, unlike Nehemiah, who was rebuilding old walls. Unlike Nehemiah, our campus is certainly not in ruins, but still our needs are real because each of the needs that I'm going to talk about this morning reflects something that already exists, a space where God is already doing work in and through Brazos Point, and these areas are experiencing momentum and growth, and they need more spaces. Everything that this provides space for is some space that God is already moving. So our needs are real, but our plans are also bold. So let's talk in particular about our project. And you'll find that this morning is going to look a little different than normal because it's kind of a combination of a vision message with a lot of different details mixed with this understanding scripturally of what's going on in Nehemiah. If you're our guest, please know that this looks different, but it's a necessary different as I cast this vision for all of us today. Maybe you've heard these things because you attended a vision night the first week of October. And for those of you that came out for the vision nights, man, thank you so much. It was so exciting to see so many people supportive with good questions and concerns and deep ownership with a high level of buy-in. So thank you for being a part of what God did those weeks. If you haven't heard this information, it's going to be new for you this morning. I'm going to say a lot of things in a little bit of time. I'm going to try to unpack it in ways that make sense. But I would encourage you, if you need to go back and watch this again, go find this on YouTube or the Brazos Point app and absorb all of these details because I think it's helpful for all of us to hear it and to hear it again. So the plan is for an additional building here on the Brazos Point campus. Let me show you a site plan. This is kind of an aerial view. This is the existing worship center. Adjacent to it is this newly constructed building. The red, green, and blue portions show the new construction. This first portion is a 2-story part. This back portion is a 1-story part with a tall ceiling. And what you'll notice about all of this is that it is built on our existing pad. These buildings are raised up on a pad that's at the right elevation, and this pad has been structurally engineered very carefully. It is a solid space for construction. We want to take advantage of the existing pad that we already have. So this detached building will be built adjacent to this corner of the worship service center and behind. It'll be detached construction, new construction right there on the existing pad. Y'all, this red, green, and blue represents 13,000 more square feet for more construction, more space for more ministry. I want to show you something that's probably even more exciting than this site plan, a rendering of what this could look like. You see this building that's built up next to the worship center on the existing campus. A couple things that I want to point out. This is the 2-story portion with the first floor here, the second floor here. The back is 2 stories opened, so it's just 1 story. You've got access points from the front. You've got access points that you'll see from the back. We'll talk more about those as we talk about the purposes of this building, but this also shows you the detached construction and the 10-foot corridor that's between each of these spaces. When you see this, my guess is you think, okay, that's pretty exciting. That's a beautiful image, and this looks really, really cool, but what on earth is this about? Why? Why is the best question, and I want to focus the bulk of our time on the what and why for our project. I'm going to address the 3 primary whys. It is age-appropriate next-gen environments, a dedicated counseling center, and on-site living rooms. And I want to take each of those 3 individually and give each of them the time that they deserve, because all 3 of these pieces are equally exciting spaces where God is moving in and through Brazos Point, and I believe He has even bigger things for more in our future. So let's discuss the first. The first what and why is the age-appropriate next-gen environments. When I say next-gen, I'm talking about our ministries that go from birth up through seniors and high school. We've got preschool, elementary, preteen, junior high, and high school. And you guys know this, Brazos Point. We are a church for the next generation. We are a church for our neighbors, the nations, and the next generation. We made that a part of our identity statement because it's not just something we aspire to, it's something that's actual, and it's something that we wanted to codify because it is so important to who we are as a church. The next generation will always be a worthy investment of our time, our talents, and our treasures, and Brazos Point's resources. And next-gen ministries at Brazos Point, they are growing, and they have changed. We have had some significant programming changes since we moved into these buildings in 2013. Over the course of these years, our student ministry has made some pretty dynamic moves, and these spaces are all growing. So this building creates a new space for junior high, which is currently meeting in this present facility. It creates a new space for preteen, which is currently meeting on Sundays in this present facility. And then by moving them out into the new space, there's a ripple effect where it creates more space and more opportunity for our elementary age students. And we'll have the opportunity to take K through 4 and divide it up into K through 2, and then 3 and 4, giving them their own unique spaces, allowing us to have even more age-appropriate messaging and teaching to those age groupings. The other thing that this does is by moving junior high and preteen into the new construction, it allows for our space for special needs ministry to triple in the existing building. Y'all, if you don't know about what God is doing through special needs at Brazos Point, it is a beautiful, fruitful part of our ministry that I wish everyone knew all the stories of how God is working in that space. And the fact that we can dedicate even more space to that beautiful ministry for special needs, that is such an exciting part of this. The other thing that happens for the next generation in this is it provides even more small group spaces on Wednesday nights. You would have to see this place on Wednesday nights to truly understand this, but we have hundreds of students, 7th through 12th grade, who are experiencing both a large group experience and small group experiences all over this building each Wednesday night. The last piece that I want you to know for next gen is that this creates indoor rec space for all of our next gen ministries. It creates a space for the kids to play. And what we believe at Brazos Point is that fun over time creates connection. And so fun is actually a deep value in our next gen ministries because we want to connect kids to kids and kids to God. And so we want to create these spaces for kids to have fun together on this property. Again, Brazos Point, we're a church for the next generation. These are a worthy investment, and they are the biggest why, easily the biggest why, behind this project. But the second one, which is also a really big deal, is the dedicated counseling center. What is this about? We believe and know from experience that Christ-centered counseling is so deeply needed in our community. It's needed for our church, it's needed for the churches across the community, and it's needed for unchurched people even in our community. But what we also know is that the barriers to getting the kind of counseling that people need are really, really real. And the greatest barrier is proximity, access. In fact, Michelle Masterson, our executive minister for formation, she's a licensed professional counselor, and she describes our local community as somewhat of a counseling desert where the access is so difficult. And I know from my own experience of making referrals through pastoral ministry, through pastoral care to different people over the course of my 18 years here, that so much of the time I'm encouraging them towards Houston and watching people not go access the help that they need because it's too difficult to overcome those barriers. So we want to create this space here for our church and for our community. This new building will create space for a 5-office professional counseling center that will operate as its own nonprofit ministry. Brazos Point, the biggest thing that I want you to know on this is our strategy. As a church, this has been our long-held strategy that when we see a need in our community, we will look and see, is anyone else meeting this need? Is there another Christ-centered ministry that's stepping into that space? How can we partner with them, resource them with people and with money, and help them go further faster? And we have done this time and time again. We find people that are serving the poor and underserved in our community. We find people that are serving people who are stuck in different phases and seasons of life. We find people that are coming alongside people that are experiencing unexpected pregnancies. We find these Christ-centered ministries and we go with them, resourcing them. But what we've also always said is if we find a need in our community that's not being met, we will prayerfully inquire of the Lord and ask God, is that our need to more directly meet? That's exactly how we feel about this counseling center. We believe that God is leading us to do this for our community. And our question is, if not us, then who? And why not us? And it's also moved and motivated by this truth of what Jesus spoke, that to whom much is given, much more will be required. To whom much has been entrusted, much more will be asked. And we believe that the Lord is asking us to lead out in this space for our church, for the community, the churches across the community, and for the unchurched community. So that's the second piece, the dedicated counseling center. Age-appropriate next-gen environments, dedicated counseling center. And the third piece is on-site living rooms. That's probably the most creative one. So what does that mean? When you think of these on-site living rooms, I want you to think about like a Brazos Point version of some comfortable classrooms for personal growth. Brazos Point is a church of small groups. This has always been true of us, and we're not changing that strategy. We have small groups that meet in homes all across the community every night from Sunday to Thursday. That's still our strategy. That's still the cornerstone of our disciple-making tools. This is not moving our small groups on site. This is recognizing a need to help connect people better, quicker. We want a shorter runway for what it takes to get involved in and engaged with our disciple-making strategy. We want people to move into community and into connection and into these disciple-making experiences faster. And we think that this will help us to establish that more efficient connection by creating spaces right here on our campus for people to engage. So what that means is you could go to Starting Point or to Rooted on Sunday morning in these living rooms and then go to worship. Or you could go to worship in the first hour and then go to Starting Point or Rooted in the second hour. Starting Point is a place where people are able to ask good questions and have conversation. It's a place for brand new believers as well as people who have doubts and are skeptics. And it's just a conversation to engage in what it means to have relationship with God. We want to make access to that available on Sunday mornings. Rooted is our class for people who are wanting to become a growing disciple. It builds understanding around the 7 practices or rhythms of what a Christ follower does, but not just the things that we do, but who we're becoming as we practice these things in following Christ, that we would be with him and that we would become more like him as we do the things that Christ did. So we want more people to experience Rooted, because Rooted then becomes the connection point into small groups. And these living rooms will allow us the access and the proximity to do that right here on Sunday mornings, while at the same time creating spaces for these buildings to be used other nights of the week, building out space where new small groups can incubate, they can establish, they can form, and they can ultimately be launched out into the community, into homes as other people step up to host those, just like our existing small groups. It's all about creating connection better, faster, and getting people in the experience of community. So there's the 3 whys. So excited about each of these unique individual pieces. All of them reflect something that God is already doing at Brazos Point and providing more space for more ministry. So I want to show you a floor plan of how this could be laid out. This is that kind of backwards L-shaped building that hugs the corner of the worship center. On the first floor of this portion, you have the dedicated counseling center. That's the majority of the first floor, as well as a new conference room that can operate as a classroom and some dedicated childcare space for the class experiences. The back side of the building on the first floor is where we would have junior high and preteen, a partition up the middle that can open it up into a gymnasium type experience where kids can play basketball, volleyball, pickleball, gaga ball, all the different kinds of ball. This is the place where you would enter in for the counseling center, and this is the check-in spot for our Next Gen Ministries on Sunday morning. This other kind of outset area is the second floor of this portion that was read on the site plan. These are those 8 living rooms, as well as another childcare space to accommodate the specific needs that these classes will present. So that's pretty much the floor plan. It's really hard for you to see from there. I would encourage you to use the little QR code on that seat, on that card on the seat beside you. That'll take you to the Up and Out website. You can see all these same drawings. We've also got the drawings over here in the corner that you can look at in greater detail this morning after the service. But what you see in those floor plans is that that's 5,500 more square feet for Next Gen Ministries. Preteens going from 1,200 square feet to 2,800 square feet. Junior high going from 1,000 square feet to 1,900 square feet, almost doubling. And all of that allows us to change up the uses in our existing building, creating more space for elementary, more space for special needs, more space for more age-appropriate targeting of our teaching and our lessons, while all at the same time benefiting Wednesday nights, including recreation space and these 8 living rooms being spaces for student ministry small groups to meet on Wednesday nights. That won't meet all of our student ministry small group needs, but it will help. It will help as we connect more students to small groups. This floor plan represents 4,000 square feet for these living rooms, the living rooms that are on the second floor, going from currently having no spaces for this to having 8 spaces for this, allowing that Sunday morning access to get people connected better and quicker. This floor plan represents 4,000 more square feet for that counseling center, right here on our campus as a gift to our community, taking us from the one office that we currently have in our existing office building, where 2 counselors are really creatively sharing that space, to having 5 spaces for many counselors as we grow this thing in time to practice this kind of Christ-centered ministry, also bringing in the kind of admin space that will be needed for this ministry as it grows in time. But as you look at that floor plan, I want you to understand that every square foot of this project is about making disciples, guiding people to discover, develop, and deploy faith in Jesus. And so they began this good work. It's a good work, church. And so I take you back to Nehemiah. They began this good work. What was a problem and a prayer moved to a collaborative project for God's people, depending on God for his help. God's inspired vision for the leaders became the people's mission. But I want you to think about this. How did they do this in Nehemiah's day? Because we can draw some important lessons from that. Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 1. Move down in your Bibles to chapter 3 and on to verse 1. And you will see what I think is a beautiful picture of collaboration. Let me read it to you, then explain it. Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zakur, son of Emery, built the next to them. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hasaniah. They laid its beams and put in its doors and bolts and bars in place. Meremoth, son of Uriah, the son of Hekaz, repaired the very next section. You go, okay, what's going on here? This list goes on and on and on, all throughout Nehemiah chapter 3. It records how the people came together to build the city wall section by section with unity, with devotion, with teamwork. It was this collaborative, faith-driven effort. And chapter 3 just keeps naming different groups and families and individuals. All individuals working together for the collective goal of building the city walls. But each group had a part to play. And that's the point. When you look at Nehemiah 3, you see that none did everything, but that all did something. What an awesome example that is for us. None did everything, but all did something. That's the how. That's how they accomplished it. And that also is the how for Up and Out. That is the challenge before us. How will we do this? Well, with God's help and with all in collaboration, each according to their own means and experience, we will move forward into this project. But to really understand it, I think you have to see and understand the numbers behind it. So let's talk about that. That's really the how and the when of all of this. Guys, based on estimates, educated estimates of architecture, construction, furnishing, and fixtures, as well as Brazos Point's practice of sacrificial generosity, this is a well-established practice. Not just that we are the recipients of sacrificial generosity, but as an organization, as a church, as a people, we are sacrificially generous. And so our practice over time has been that when we do capital campaigns to build buildings, we give a tithe of the building fund away, 10% given to our church planting missions partners. We don't stop giving sacrificially when we're in a space of needing more funds. And so, in addition to the estimates for architecture, construction, furniture, and fixtures, adding to that our campaign tithe in lieu of our 2026 and 2027 World Missions offerings, the total projected cost is around $4.5 million. Our campaign goal, as we raise this money together, is to raise $3.5+ million for this project. Moving in a time of dedicated giving where we call the church to give above your regular offerings that are dedicated to the budget fund, which establish the operations for the church year in and year out. We move into a 36-month period of giving that goes above and beyond, up and out. The rest of the funds needed for the project will be met through responsible financing and through the use of some savings. But let's talk specifically about this 36-month pledge where all do something. If you would, in the seat back in front of you or behind you, there's a pledge card. If you would grab that, let's talk a little bit about what this is and what to do with it. This 36 months pledge is asking people to give above what you give to the budget fund, to give even more. And there's really three groups of people that I want to talk to this morning. First, to the people who are already sacrificially generous to Brazos Point, and we are asking you to give even more sacrificially and to dig even deeper. I want to talk to you first, and the first thing that I want to say to you is thank you. Thank you for what you faithfully do. We do not take for granted how you give to the operations of this church, how you love the ministries that God has created here, and how you are passionate about funding what God is doing. Thank you. We don't take you for granted. And as we ask you to go even further and to do even more, that's not lost on me that that's a big ask. Guys, I would put my family in this category. And so as I think about this from my own experience and my own season of life, as we look to send our first kid to college with the prospect of two being right behind her potentially, I recognize that this timing is complicated and difficult. We are to give sacrificially to this church, but we want to give even more sacrificially, and we will practice what we are preaching as we move in this direction. Why would we do this even when it doesn't make sense on paper in this season of our life? Because we believe in this purpose. We believe deeply in each of these three purposes, and we find great joy in giving to create more space for more ministry because we believe in what God is doing in and through this church. So how will we individually do that? in this season of our lives, we're going to have to sacrifice and do some things different. We've got some house projects that we're going to have to push even further down the road. We've got a minivan that we're going to drive even longer than we wanted to, right? We're going to not do some things that we do as a family who highly values experiences with our kids. But all of it's worth it. None of it motivated by guilt. All of it moved by joy because we believe in this. So for those of you who are also in that space, man, thank you. The second group that I want to talk to is people who call Brazos Point home. Maybe you're a member, maybe you're not, but you know that this is your church. This is your church home. And though this is your church, when it comes to giving and contributing to the ministries of the church, rather than doing it sacrificially and planned, it comes across more spontaneously and unplanned. We want to ask you to begin to give both sacrificially and systematically. We want to call you to build your family's budget around generosity to the church. To that group, I want to say to you also, thank you. Thank you for how you give to the church. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for being a part of the contributions that make the budget fund go and work and provide all that Brazos Point does for not just our church family, but for our community, for our neighbors, the nations, and the next generation. Thank you. When I think about this, I want you to know that as I speak to you guys, it is with a sense of compassion, because I recognize that Ashley and I have never not known what this meant. We were taught these things before we went into adulthood. We were taught these things before we entered into our married life. And so as we entered into adulthood and marriage all at the same time, these things were ingrained in us, and we began our marriage and our financial life giving sacrificially to the church with percentage-based giving. And so for you guys, that this is new to you, man, I get it. I think. I get that it's scary and that it does require big faith. But man, what I want to say to you is that I want you to experience the joy of prioritizing the work of the kingdom and the ministry of the church as one of the first things that you put into your plan for how you do spending and living and budgeting. And I'm going to tell you this, even in this season, though we have never not been a part of giving like this, year over year, we have to readdress this and think back through this as we take on our own goals towards moving deeper into sacrificial generosity. Year over year, it requires planning and evaluation and systematic giving. I want you to also experience that joy and the discipleship that happens around that space as God grows you through your personal finances. The last group that I want to talk to is to the folks in the room who consider Brazos Point home. I'm not talking to our guests. If you are here because you're exploring faith in Jesus, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to people that say, this is my church home, whether you're a member or not, and yet you have not yet started contributing to the ministry of the church. I absolutely don't want to guilt you or shame you. I simply want to invite you to put your treasure in this place where your heart is and see how much more your heart will follow. I want to invite you to contribute to the ministries that have contributed so much to you and to your life. I want to invite you into this space of discipleship where you really will see the Lord use this as a tool to grow you, to stretch you, and to strengthen you. I want to invite you into the joy of giving sacrificially and generously. And I just want to encourage you, take a step. And let this 36-month pledge be your next step. Like, let this be your training wheels of a place where God can begin to cultivate a discipline of giving in your life and in your family and in your budget. Let these 36 months just be the place where you start. And after you start and experience this and do this, man, keep going and keep asking the Lord how he wants to use you. Lastly, to our guests, to those who are exploring faith, and to our brand new friends who are still trying to decide if this is the church for you, man, we're not asking for your participation, we're just asking for your prayers. If at some point you say, I'm all in here and you want to participate, then you can make a pledge. Until then, just pray for us as we work into this project together. Brazos Point, we want you to take this pledge card home with you. And we want to give you 21 days to pray, to prayerfully inquire of the Lord and ask him how he wants you to participate. Now, As I say that, I also want to acknowledge that so many of you are facing uncertainty right now. I know that. I get that. For those of you who are walking through uncertain times and difficult circumstances, listen to me. All you can do is prayerfully make decisions based on what you know right now. That's a principle in life. Inquire of the Lord, ask God to lead you and guide you, and make decisions based on what you know right now. And if things change, when things change, as things change, you can change your plans. You can change your commitment. You can change your pledge. You can move in a different direction as you get greater clarity around what you're actually experiencing. So for everyone, I want you to understand that these pledges will be private. These aren't going to be posted. They won't be public. We're not going to take some kind of thermometer in the foyer and post these all over it. No, when you turn this in on November 9th, it will be private. It will be for our church financial office, and then to some extent also used as a total for our executive team as we understand where we're at and how to continue to lead forward in this project. But these are private between you and God and some leaders within the church. The last piece that I want you to see on the card is this Kickstart offering. The Kickstart is something that needs some explanation. So once you have determined the amount that you want to give for the 36-month period of the pledge, the Kickstart is just asking you to front load as much as you possibly can into the beginnings of this time period, because the more cash we have on the front end, the more it will shape the timeline of the project as we move into the next steps and phases of architecture and construction. So the Kickstart is just bring as much as you can on the front end and then budget the rest over the rest of the 36 months. Guys, hear me out. If you have questions about any of this, the building, the funding, the project, the timeline, the floor plan, the site plan, any and all of this, all questions are welcomed. We want to lead with clarity. We want to lead with transparency. We want to lead with vulnerability. Kirk, Michelle, and I will all be over here in Connection Point after the service. We will hang along for question and answer as long as you want to. Come see us, because all questions are welcomed. So now we're asking you to pray, and then on November 9th to pledge. Let me give you a timeline real quick that brings all of that together as we close. We've launched the Up and Out Vision. November 9th, we're wanting the pledge cards back with the Kickstart offering. After that, we enter into the 36-month pledge of funding that begins December of 2025. We're hoping that the timeline will work to where construction could start in the first quarter of 2026. If not, in the second quarter, we're getting estimates of 10 to 12 months of construction, which mean an estimated construction completion would be around the first quarter of 2027. And then you get to December of 2028, and that's after 3 years where this 36-month pledge funding comes to a conclusion. But the part that we're at right now is here. So they began this good work. Church, let's go up and out like Nehemiah. Focused, committed, collaborative, and devoted. Let's step up in faith and out in generosity. Let's do this good work for our neighbors, the nations, and the next generation. Let's do this good work together, but with God's help. Because without him, it will never work. Let's pray.